Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Dutch rejoining us. We got John rejoining us. He was able to come in at the last minute. We're very excited to have you here. Now, while I am excited, y'all should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all of the things so that you get your emails in, well, not just the morning, whenever we go live, which is every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section. We will engage those throughout the show. I don't have any right now, unfortunately, but missing Salty Jinx hitting us up first thing, but we will get him in when he gets here. Today, we're going to be talking about learning and growth in the under the theme of mindset. So I have another little quote, a little description of what a mindset is, and that is the ideas and attitudes with which a person approaches a situation, especially when these are seen as being difficult to alter, which I think is a really good lead into learning and growth. But before we get into too deep into the conversation, let's get some intros. So let's start with John. Why don't we go with you? 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff. Hit us.
All right. I'm Jonathan Pope. I'm the co-founder of Building the Elite. We specialize in helping individuals prepare for special operations selection programs. So you can find us on Instagram. We post a ton of content on there, and we also have a 500-page plus textbook on the topic as well.
And it is quite the textbook. I just got mine recently. It is fantastic so far. I'm about 3 pages in, so I haven't got too deep in it, but it's pretty cool just to engage it right away. Dutch, how about yourself? 10, 15 seconds. What do you got?
15 seconds, not enough to cover. Just kidding. Long-time Army guy, special operations background, currently the lead bottle washer magazine loader at the Sawmill Training Facility right here in Lawrence, South Carolina. And I'm always glad to be back here with you. Thanks for asking me on.
Absolutely. Always good chatting with you, brother. So as I said, we're going to be getting into learning and growth, and I'm just going to hit this topic or this definition one more time, and then we'll get some first thoughts. So the idea, mindset is the ideas and attitudes with which a person approaches a situation, especially when these are seen as being difficult to alter. So I want to get your guys' first thoughts on that, but just on the mindset of learning and growth in general. John, I'm going to start with you. What are your first thoughts?
Oh, man, that's such a huge topic. Well, I mean, the first thing you basically described a growth mindset there. That's really the first aspect of this, and that's seeing challenges as an opportunity to grow throughout life. So the whole idea is that feedback, setbacks, challenges, basically any opportunity as you move through life is an opportunity to grow and continue to get better. And that's a kind of fundamental pervasive mindset, and it's an attitude. So it's not fixed. It's purely based on how you choose to look at experiences as you move through life. It's a lot of times people think of things based on their personality traits, like it is the way they are. And that is by default kind of a fixed mindset. Well, we all have tendencies, like how neurotic we are, or how introverted or extroverted we are. Growth mindset and the way we deal with challenges is purely an attitude, which means it is 100% within our own control. It's a decision that we make and how we move through those challenges. So that to me is kind of like the framework and the first place to start, I think.
I love it. Chris, Dutch, what about yourself?
It is a huge topic, without a doubt. Really, it comes under the whole, maybe we said this before, maybe I have anyways, of what are you prepared to do? What mindset are you taking? You know, what philosophical mindset are we engaging in? Right away, it starts with, the subject itself is a huge subject, just like it was aforementioned, but, can you really neck it down? Mindset for what, right? What is that mission? What are you prepared to do? So it's going to take a much more difficult, so to do a difficult task, it may take a much more nose to the grindstone mindset than, for instance, playing a video game. What kind of mindset does that take when you just sit down behind a computer and just start screwing around with your thumbs? Does it take any mindset at all? Or is that, men are created out of their brains are like waffles, right? They have these little boxes. So is that you have to change that mindset from that thing to the next thing. I don't know if the definition can even possibly cover everything. So again, I think it comes down to what you're going to do, what you need to do, and then how are you going to accomplish it. The stoic type of idea when the aforementioned John, right? It's John. I just met you, John. Couldn't meet you. But the challenges, right? And so instead of calling them problems, these are just challenges, right? These are all these little challenges make up whatever fabric is of your life, right? Whatever that is, if that makes any sense to you. But it's not. I don't think we should look at mindset in any kind of one particular way, for sure. And they're challenges. You just, instead of complaining about them, right? It's like the windshield hits the bug or the bug hits the windshield. You could view it either way you want to, but you need to have a mindset where you're not a victim. Have a mindset where you will accomplish this stuff. You can, with knowledge, patience, and power, you can do all things. So go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mindset being such a massive topic, we are talking about mindset all week. This is just one small part of it, and this is I can't wait to get into it. Shaun, what are your first thoughts on this?
Well, I don't mind plugging Building the Elite, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's a better resource out there on Instagram in the sense of learning more about yourself, learning more about the world around you, learning how to live a better life. I know there's lots of great resources out there. There's lots of influential people that I track, and by influential, I don't mean influencers. I mean, people who inspire me. And Building the Elite is an inspiring resource that teaches you a lot of stuff for free. And so it is a massive subject on how to learn and how to grow. And if anyone out there is struggling to choose a starting point, I would point them, and as I always do, point them towards Building the Elite to start their journey, to start some growth mindset, to start to learn what they A, don't know, and B, what they might be interested in. And so it is a massive subject, learning and growth. But if you throw a dart at it and it lands somewhere, then that's a good place to start. That's somewhere. And somewhere, as far as I'm concerned, is the free resources available to you at Building the Elite. Now, I wasn't paid to put that plug in. Building the Elite, as there's people out there that ask me, hey, how much did those guys pay you to keep hounding on them? They pay me nothing. The book that I own back in Rossland, I purchased for full price. Anything that has ever happened with Building the Elite, it's all been full pop. So no one's sending me royalties, but I will always give a nod to any organization that is truly serving humanity in a positive way. And the guys at Building the Elite do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw this out here one more time because I was in the little box, but bam, right here. And for anybody that's wondering, Craig did send this to me. I didn't pay for the whole thing. I paid for the shipping, but I didn't pay for the book. So I do want to give a little shout out too, because it is fantastic. And like I said, I'm just digging into it now. It is, it's in depth to say the least. It is in depth. But the first kind of direction that I want to ask you guys is, you've all spent time training people. You've all spent time engaging in this this process of teaching others, and I'm wondering about where some of the major blockages have you seen in terms of others learning. So how do we engage those? What are the blockages, and then how do we engage them? Let's go with that. Dutch, let's start with you.
What are the blockages? Wow. Willingness to continue to move forward. An unwillingness. Unwillingness to meet the challenge of the next endeavor. I oftentimes go back to, like today's young men and young women, and my dog is going to attack me right here. Rah, rah. Okay, so go lay down. I just want to get paid. I don't want to work hard. I just want to get paid. You hear this all the time, right? I just want my piece, what I deserve. And we talked a little bit about this on the couple podcasts ago, where we talked about what people might be owed, or what people think that they owe. They don't think they owe anything. This debt of gratitude. So I think the challenge is when I'm training people, are you in it to win it? So it's different when you're training a bunch of people that want to come to a camp and want to learn how to shoot pistols and rifles and do things in a tactical manner. And they put their money forward. They set aside time. They bought equipment and they bought ammunition to do the thing. Okay, so that's one. You go back to trainees, right? If they're conscripted, of course, this can be completely different. They don't have the same ideological mindset as infantryman or whatever, whomever, a basic trainee who wants to join this unit because of an ideal, right? So lack of ideologies, lack of hard work, lack of desire to complete that thing. I think that's some of my biggest challenges.
Absolutely. John, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would say it kind of goes back. I'll tie it into the growth mindset stuff and this concept of hardiness as well. But the biggest thing really is the way people learn. Our brains are basically prediction machines. So we have so much sensory information coming at us in any moment that we're really not like seeing reality as though we think we are. Like in our head, we imagine that we have like 2 video cameras that are our eyes, and we're picking up an objective sense of what reality is. But actually, it's so much information our brain can't handle it. So what we do is we basically have a prediction of what we think we're going to see. And then if there are errors in what that is, then we perceive that and it updates it in real time. So that sounds like fancy mumbo jumbo, but this actually does matter in reality. And the reason why that matters is attached to each prediction is we have a confidence scale, like how confident we are in what we're seeing is the truth, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what we're perceiving, everything. And if the more confident we are, the less open we are to new information. So this is when the truth is slapping us in the face and we can't see it. And so this openness to new experiences, to being wrong, being curious, taking the time to see a different perspective that might challenge you and consider that and actually sit with that. So it doesn't matter whether it's doing a physical task, whether it's taking someone's opinion or a different way of thinking about life or the world. If you're not open to new information, you can explain away anything. This is both the amazing thing about humans and the terrible thing, is that 2 people can see the world in completely opposite ways and be 100% convinced of their validity, and they're being both 100% honest because they are objectively seeing the things that they want to see, and that's just how our brains work. So again, the antidote to this is just seeing the world objectively. It's not seeing the world objectively, it's being open and curious and constantly looking to update your model. No matter how capable you are at anything, it's that growth mindset. It's being willing to be wrong. It's be willing to look silly, to not know everything, and to be open to every situation, to just seeing it as best you can and trying to perceive things as though you don't actually, even when you are the expert, trying not to be the expert. And that kind of ties in, we were talking about this, Shaun, a little bit about I think beginner's mind, which I believe is like a Japanese origin. I think it's from Musashi. But that's really the root of it, is going into everything, being curious and open and not thinking that we know about things. And that ties into all the concepts of growth mindset. And kind of what Dutch said too, one of the things that we screen for a lot, and we talk to a lot of people specifically when it gets into challenges, is this idea of hardiness, which is composed of the 3 C's, which is commitment, control, and challenge. So commitment is just willing to see something through regardless of how difficult it is. And it's seeing things as it gets hard as being a good thing. That means you're in the right place because it's important to you. Control is always feeling like you have control over a situation, regardless of what's happening. So even if you can't control the external situation in your life, you can control what's happening in your mind. You can control how you're reacting to things, your emotions, your thoughts, and your reaction to those things. And then challenge is a good thing. And that kind of relates to all the stuff Dutch was talking about, right? Like you want to be there, you're in the right place, and you want to be challenged.
Absolutely. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that the two fellows, to tie both of their comments together, is in line with how I see things as the biggest challenge is the growth mindset aspect and the wantingness to be where you're at. And so, I used to be a pretty good shooter, but I would put money on the table that Dutch is a better shooter than I am right now because he's in the game on the regular, whereas I am not. And so I would have no problem stepping up onto Dutch's range, him running a class, and I would get after it. But I'm pretty sure I would get smoked. But I got no problems with that because I'd be in the right environment with the right mindset. I love a good challenge, but I don't mind getting my arse kicked by the right people. And so it comes down to, for me, and I think for most people, being comfortable with what you are and understanding that you're in the right place with the right people. And so to use Dutch's example of, we'll call it conscripts, or we'll call it someone who is in the service, but there because they have to be rather than because they want to be. Well, that's the wrong mindset if you want to improve or evolve rapidly. You've got to want to be there. You've got to want to load your magazines. You've got to want to put the rounds where they're supposed to be. You've got to want to listen to the direction. You've got to want to be in the game. And so there's a large delta between being in the game because you have to be there or being in the game because you want to be there. And that ties directly back to growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Dutch, I'm going to come back to you on this. Any thoughts on anything we've talked about so far?
I, agree with everything pretty much, right? It's always cool when we get great minds that think alike together. So 100%, I think John is much more cerebral about it than I am. I'm much more of a bully. But in the end, if this group of men and women are working towards a common goal, then there's a lot less challenges than there are when you have to pick and choose. It's different from a selection process where we know that we're going to lose some of these people just because it's too difficult. It's not for them, etc. No harm, no foul. Get out, right? If it were easy, monkeys would do it. And so, like if you look at SFAS, the Special Forces Assessment and Selection, the first series of tests that they do, really, they just throw you in the sandpit, make you do PT till you vomit. That's really, and then whoever's uncomfortable in that position, they depart. And so they're starting to weed out that who really wants to be here kind of thing. So, in the end, it's just, in the end, that's the key. I want those people. Not only do I want them because I want them to be there. I want them to want to be there. And then once we start talking philosophy, whatever it might be, I want them to have buy-in. Come on in. That's just part of the good leadership anyway, too, right? If I want these people to do what I want them to do, then they need to have buy-in. I hope that we all have buy-in together to do all these things, right? A rising tide lifts all boats, or whatever. It's a rowboat or a submarine. It's the team that makes it together. Each accomplishes more, right? Wow, how many different phrases can we use, right? Business or whatnot.
Absolutely. John, I want to come to you on this as well. Any other thoughts on anything else that we've gone over so far? But I have a specific question for you afterwards. Anything else before I jump into that? No? Okay. So the specific question I have for you, and I'm going to give it to everybody as well, but you spent some time training people for selections specifically, and I think this is a great example to look at in terms of mindset and growth and all these things. But those that want to be there, and this came from a question somebody asked me to ask Shaun, actually, but I'm going to ask you specifically on this one, is that the people that want to be there and they have the buy-in, they do the things, and they work their butt off, and then don't get selected. The mindset coming in that or out of that, basically, what would you engage that person into next after they've tried and did not succeed? What mindset would you engage them in that next scenario?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with people in the situation many times. And the difference is whether or not they're process focused or outcome focused. And sometimes people who are fixated on getting the outcome, they want to get selected, they want to be on the team. Everybody wants that, right? Like, 'cause that's why they're there, that's why they did all the work. But at the end of the day, it's not like life gets much easier once you're on the team. Like, the process doesn't end. You have to keep going. You have to keep learning. You're going to be uncomfortable day in and day out. Expectations are going to be high. And so if you really want it, that drive shouldn't go away and the process should remain the same. They're going to give you some feedback. You can reflect on your experience and you can learn what you did well, what didn't go well. And if you're really committed to actually like walking down that path, that means you can take a step back and just continue along with the process. That means you identify the areas where you need to grow and you focus on those things. And you know, and ultimately, if the people that are the most successful are focused on the process itself, the outcome will take care of itself most of the time if they're doing the right things day in and day out. And so that's always how we reframe things. And that's also oftentimes what I'm looking for when I talk to people. That's a malleable trait, right? Like some people are taught this really well based on how they're raised, and other people are taught to fixate on outcomes. And it is malleable. So somebody who is more focused on outcomes, that's when we'll talk about that and whether or not the process, and that kind of gets back to the hardiness thing, right? Like you have to want to be there. Like you're not doing the hard thing to go do easy things afterwards. You're doing the hard thing so you can be around other people who like doing the hard stuff day in and day out. So you can be surrounded by people who care about the same things you do. They have the same values, to what Dutch was talking about. That's the whole point of being there. And if they really care about those things, then they'll reinvest and they'll continue growing and they'll do the work. And then when they show up to selection next time, maybe they get selected, maybe they don't. But if you always follow that process. So for some context here, I was not in the military, have not served. But the reason why Craig and I get along so well, and we've been great friends, and our business partner, Craig is my business partner, and he's the co-author on the book, and we work on everything together, is because we've had that approach and we worked together for 15 years. And then we hit it off from the get-go, and that's always been my approach in life, and that's his approach in life. And so it kind of doesn't matter on the context. If you find the people who care about the same things and have the same values, then you'll end up doing things that are meaningful work, whether it's on the specific team that you got selected for or didn't get selected for or something else, because you'll find the right people and you'll continue to grow and be more capable.
Absolutely. Shaun, I'm coming to you next. What are you thinking on this?
Yeah, man, I love the process. All about the process. The outcome will always show up if you stay in the process long enough. And so what if it's someone who's objective focused? Well, they're in for a lot of hard lessons. And perhaps they'll see failure, and perhaps they'll quit the process that they didn't know that they were in. Because the process to get to selection and the process beyond selection is a lifelong journey. Now, how do you get good at the process? Well, you can be taught it for sure, or you can be born with it inside of you, I guess. But either way, you've got to figure out how to move within the process, or as Musashi would say, the way of life. The path that we all can walk if we wrap our heads around that, a philosophical concept. And so the process is critical. Objective-based is a road to ruin for selection, for sure. But if you're objective-based and you step into selection and you don't make it in selection, and you walk up on me and say, hey, so now what do I do? Well, I'm going to sit you down and I'm going to figure out what you're all about in the moment, where your head's at, and what you want next. Because if you're objective based, then you're probably going to want to focus on the next objective. But I'm going to use the objective as the carrot to introduce you to the stick called the process, the carrot and the stick. And so there's always a way to shape someone's trajectory. There's always a way to recalibrate them in the direction that ultimately they want to go in by balancing objective-based versus process-based. And someone who's 100% process-based, but isn't objective based also needs a little bit of calibration as well. And so these two paths can work in parallel, can work together, can work against each other. But as a coach or someone who's there to help guide someone in that moment where they've seen failure and they're frustrated and they don't know what to do next, it's going to take someone with years of experience in both the path and the objective based lifestyle to help them understand how to move to that next, we'll call it objective or process that they're going to step into. My job is to help them always find a way. We will always find a way is literally a motto in Chance Calm. And so if someone asks me to help them and I think they deserve my time, which is an entirely different conversation, then I will give them my time and get them to the point that they want to get to through a boutique solution for them based on who they are sitting in front of me in that moment, asking me the question, hey, Shaun, what do I do next?
That can go all kinds of routes. Dutch, what are you thinking?
No, it's fascinating because when John started, what you mentioned it, John started, Shaun finished most of it. But when somebody's not fit for one job or one selection, does that mean he's no good? He or she is not any worth. We're not worth it. Certainly, even if we have tomes of paperwork built upon these people, that okay, we want him to come, we want her to be here. And then they show their cards and something goes wrong, whatever it might be. It could be a physical element, could be a mental thing. So what's that challenge next? And you authored the question of, what happens to them next, I think, right? Chance, give or take. And then John's back into, okay, well, not everything's for everybody, but what about a second look? What about a third look? Certainly, as leaders, we can say, you might deserve a second or third look. Look at, I'm going to use the professional football or even professional sports as a rubric. One, you've seen it before too. And I back to front, I can't exactly regurgitate what Shaun just said, but if someone knows the way or the leadership process doesn't work for him, they go to a tribe, right? The Cleveland Indians, or well, they're not the Indians anymore, or whatever. You get the idea. Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever. And then they do well there, and they don't do well enough, and then they start to fade away, and they need to be removed to be replaced by someone else. But they can always go somewhere else under a different banner of leadership and do much better. They can flourish. You've seen this in professional sports over and over again. So it's a very interesting psychological piece to the whole. There is a standard in selection, whatever that selection might be. You have to do this with this, that fast, or this slow, or whatever. Put these pieces together, do the thing, remain psychologically intact, etc. What are all the things you got to do? It doesn't matter, right? Put your story there. But without a doubt, it may not be a good day for them. It may not be a good week for them, a good month for them. And then they come back and they can do it again. But it's going to be, dependent upon what kind of information we have on the subject and how well they can do it, how well they might be able to fit in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back around because I think there's so much depth in this particular topic. But John, any other thoughts on this?
Well, I really like what Shaun and Dutch said there, where you're just kind of tying it back into the process has to have objective feedback too, right? Like you have to objectively be capable of improving and hitting certain standards. And sometimes, to what Dutch was talking about, certain jobs aren't for certain people because objective things just don't fit their personality profile or their physical capacities or their other things, right? That doesn't mean they can't still move towards whatever they want to be. I guess the process, the thing I was kind of orienting towards a little bit more on top of that is just that it's just about not being so obsessed about hitting any specific outcome and more about investing in growth on the whole, right? And focusing and using outcomes as objective data to make better decisions, to adjust your approach and move forward. And so that's oftentimes what we do as a coach and this is what we do all the time with all my clients is every month, or actually every week, people send us check-ins and then we look at, okay, well, this was the plan and this was the theory and this is the idea of what should be happening. And then we objectively see what actually happened, right? Did we actually move towards where we wanted to be? And then if not, we make adjustments. And so, but at the end of the day, what I need them to do is to show up and do the work and focus on the process and the quality of their effort day in and day out. And if they do that, then, and they have this process of consistently doing something often enough and then measuring that against an objective marker of improvement, then we know they're going to be continually improving. So that's, as a coach, that's the process. And that's always what, it's like an after action review. We do these all the time in everything we do. We want to know objectively, what can we know, and then what can we do about that, right? But the process is always the same. The principles and the philosophy and the mindset that underpin that are the things that will drive us forward in the long run.
Absolutely. Shaun, come back to you. Any other thoughts?
I do. Coincidentally, this morning, I woke up at 0200 hours here in Kyoto because, you know, that's just what you do when you're on a big travel day. And so someone had sent me in my DMs a video of a clip. And you know, it's an inspiring little clip at first glance. It's some dude in his Lululemon jogging down a winter road. It's not actually even hardcore winter. It's just like a light dusting of snow. He's looking pretty large and in charge, though, in the drone footage. And he's running down the road, and you can hear the background chirping, and it's all about, is anyone working as hard as I am? I deserve to win. You know, that whole message, because he's out there like he's the only guy in the world running in winter. And so they sent me this message, and they said, you know, this reminds me of you. And I thought, you know, like that, but that's not what I do. I do that every freaking day, except I don't flare out on the IG. And so I thought, man, you know, like maybe my messaging is wrong, maybe, and like this person who sent it to me did it with like good intent. And we had a couple of laughs back and forth. And I said, you know, I just got to let you know that what that dude's doing is what I do on the regular. I just don't talk about it a lot. I don't run because that running's freaking boring. But I do shred on my mountain bike in winter and summer and spring and fall and all the time and all the stuff. And so I thought, man, you know, like maybe I need to put the word out on IG somehow that like the way I've run my process, my life is consistency of effort, doing hard things on the regular. And by hard, I mean like not just running down a road. I mean like I just won't eat for the day. And I'll go do hard things because I'm curious as to how I'm going to perform under those conditions. Or I won't drink water for a long time just to see how that positively or negatively impacts my performance that day. And so I mess with my physiology. I mess with my psychology. I mess with my emotional state. I push my envelope on a consistent, regular basis to test who I am within my lifelong process of trying to better understand what I'm capable of as a human being. And so as I thought about this little clip that I got sent, which again is cool, nice drone footage, bro. What I did think was, how am I going to explain this out to the IG this morning at 0300 hours in Kyoto? So what I did was I kind of flashed through some photos that I've got from back in the day. And I thought, man, I can't use any more army goof photos. I'll pull something from my civilian world. So maybe that'll resonate with more people. But I considered, how do I demonstrate adversity and a new mindset and consistency of effort without flaring out like I'm, you know, still pulling the Pathfinder shtick? And so I pulled up a photo from almost exactly 7 years ago when I was getting presented my blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I put a little post on Instagram about it, and along the lines of this, that, you know, 7 years ago, I got my Brazilian blue belt. And prior to that, I'd done 32 years of martial arts. And when I showed up on that first night, I just turned 53 years old, my first night on the BJJ mats. I thought that I was a scrapper. And I was. I've kicked a lot of freaking arse in my life, man. I've done a lot of scrapping. And it's not that I'm proud of it. It's just that I've done it. And I can hold my own. So when I showed up on the mats, I didn't think it was going to be a cakewalk, but I kind of thought, I got this. I so didn't have it. I got my arse whooped, as everyone does their first night on the BJJ mats. And every night after that, if you're in a club that has talent, guess what? You're a nobody. And it doesn't matter what titles you've got on this sleeve or this chest or that chest. None of that matters. All that matters is when you show up, you're going to get your arse whooped. That's it. That's all. And it doesn't matter what, fantasy story you tell yourself about how large and in charge you are. You just ain't. The mats will sort you out. The mats of justice, as it is called. And so what I did was I wrote a little piece this morning about how I thought I was this, and then I got my arse whooped, and it's now 8 years of being on the BJJ mats of consistent effort, but I don't flare out about that. I'm not always talking about the BJJ. I'm not always putting up photos every night about how I'm so sweaty and I'm so given her and I'm so awesome. What I do is I just do the work consistently, and I let the outcome show up eventually. And so how to explain that to the interwebs, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how to help people understand that it's not about the social media glory. It's about just freaking doing the work quietly. Maybe not in the shadows, but just getting the hard stuff done on a regular basis. And that will eventually, through a process-based path, lead you to outcomes. Well, what outcome am I seeking now? Plus of 40 years of martial arts. What I'm seeking is just to learn more about myself. I'm seeking to stay in the warrior lifestyle that I was taught when I joined the basic infantry, that resonated with me, that I loved on, and that I've stayed in ever since. Why am I in Japan right now? It's not just because the food is freaking awesome. I'm here because I wanted to stand in the footsteps of Miyamoto Musashi. That's why I was out at his waterfall 3 days ago, looking to see where he was swinging his sword through that waterfall to learn how to do double sword fighting. Why was I standing next to the dueling tree that he fought his third duel in Kyoto and basically smoked the best sword fighting school in Kyoto at the time, destroyed the scene because he'd been out there in the boonies swinging a sword through a waterfall that I was standing next to. For 4 years, he'd led a warrior lifestyle in silence and then went and took care of business. And so I wanted to experience that, and that, along with some good food. So I didn't travel halfway around the world to better understand how awesome sushi is here. I traveled halfway around the world to walk my process, to live the life that I appreciate, to better understand more about myself through the contextuality of someone who did it better than I did, but who I ascribe to try to be someday in some small way via my process, following his process.
Bam. Well, let's shut down the afternoon. That was a great way to finish it off. That was solid. Dutch, you got thoughts? What do you got? I got no audio on you there, Dutch, unfortunately.
How about now?
There we go. Yep.
What the heck? Technology. So I said, I want to make sure it was a sword or was it a boken? Because I'm pretty sure he destroyed everyone in hand-to-hand combat with a boken.
Both, actually.
Well, you're right. So in the 3 duels that he did here in Kyoto, the first one, the head of the clan, he crippled with a blow to the left shoulder and knocked that guy unconscious. And after that duel, the head of that clan never fought again. The second guy, he actually killed with a sword, the brother of the head of the clan. And then the third duel, right by I believe it's the Saragamato tree, the dueling tree. It was actually a 12-year-old who was the head of the clan at that point. Now, the 12-year-old, through the rest of the clan, had challenged Miyamoto Musashi to a duel out of honor and set it as a night duel. And so Miyamoto kind of got that hinky feeling. He hid in the bushes, watched a boatload of the troops show up with muskets and swords and pikes and all of the good stuff, along with the 12-year-old. And so as nighttime fell, he jumped out of the bushes, chopped off the head of the 12-year-old, and then drew both swords and fought his way out of he counter ambushed the ambush And so that was the initiation or the inception of the two-sword fighting style that he then became famous for. So he used Boken, he did use sword to duel, but he also used live blade as well.
Yeah. John, got any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I mean, I can't really, I can't comment on Musashi there. I definitely do not have my history down the way Shaun does. No, I think that's a great way to end it off. We talked about this on our Instagram actually a couple weeks ago. It was something that came up, and when Shaun was speaking, it resonated, was to do the hard thing when no one's looking. And that's really the true sign of whether or not you're focused on the person that you want to be and the things you want to do, or whether or not you just want the titles or someone to know about it. And like we related this to training and just going out and doing the hard thing, PRing like the worst conditions that you've trained in, for example, but then don't tell anybody about it, right? The idea is to just focus on where you want to go in the process of getting there, not about the specific accolades you're going to get in the process. And that really is what kind of distills down to.
Yeah. This is I don't mean we're actually going to shut it down. That was such a great way to fit, like, such a great little diatribe there that it's hard to follow. I wrote this down earlier just before you started talking, Shaun, I don't know if you guys remember your Greek history, but the 300 Spartans fighting at Thermopylae, and there's if you've seen the movie, you've seen the scene that I'm talking about where Ephialtes, the hunchback, comes up to Leonidas and says he wants to fight. And Leonidas goes through basically a very rundown version of the selection, right? You have to be able to do this. You need to protect the person next to you, neck to knee, right? With your shield. If you can't lift your shield, you can't be part of the wall. Too bad. But you can still be part of the fight. So I want you to, manage the bodies, help the wounded, all these things. And the reason that I think that stuck in my head was the fact that there's lots of times where, we want to do the sexy thing. We want to do the cool thing. We want to do the ninja thing, right? Everybody wants to be in the special forces to do the special stuff, but they don't realize all of the extra, not the extra, I guess even the extra stuff, all of the stuff in order to just be there, let alone continue to work there and fight there and so on and so forth. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on that concept of, do you think that more people succeed within the realms of special forces, special operations, that kind of stuff, with the mindset of, I'm just here to work. Like, I'm happy to do whatever it is that needs to be done. Let's get it done, versus I'm here to do the sexy boy stuff. I want to run and gun. I want to do all those cool things. And then on top of that, how do we apply that to everyday life, to people that aren't special forces, that aren't special operations, that aren't looking at that realm, but still want to have that style of mindset? So multiple questions in there all at once, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Dutch, I'm coming to you first. What do you think?
So you have to remind me of where we're going on this, right? But so let's first of all have joy in everything you do. If you can have joy or satisfaction in everything you do, then you can be support or you could be assault, right? And Shaun knows that the teeth is almost always much smaller than the tail. The ability to, for 101st Airborne in World War II, to jump into theater and do the things they did, it takes a whole lot more people to be able to do that, for them to do that, than it takes for their own, the division, 10,000 men, give or take. So it's going to take probably 50,000 people to allow them to be able to do what they need to do. Maybe slightly less, but the tail always larger. But if we could be joyous in that, right? We already mentioned it already that some jobs aren't for some people. So if you look at the beehive, right? I talk about it all the time. There's worker bees, and then there's soldier bees, and et cetera, and there's a queen. I get it, but you need to try to be satisfied with your lot in life, but do it well and take joy in it. And sometimes you can't do those things. Sometimes you can. Audie Murphy, most decorated American infantryman of World War II, most decorated soldier of World War II. Too small to be in the airborne or something like that, right? He couldn't be a ranger, et cetera, et cetera. He was a regular infantryman in 3rd ID, if I'm not mistaken. And you please, I'm happy to be wrong. Again, he was happy in his work. He did it well. He found himself in opportunities to do that work well. And he was certainly capable of holding that shield and being on the line.
Absolutely. John, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Dutch said, and just being happy and open and all the time, right? And it doesn't matter what you're doing. I mean, all our SF guys, I mean, you're not, or special operations guys, they have to, they can't just want to do the cool guy stuff, because they're going to be in for a lot of pain and suffering before they ever get to the cool guy stuff. And so that quickly fades. And anyone, and we see this all the time, we just call them like people who just don't know any better, or they're not serious yet, right? People who are serious know, they don't necessarily know how hard it's going to be, but they know it's going to be tough, right? And they're willing to at least put themselves out there and try to go through that process. But it's the same for anything, like starting a business. Shaun, you know this, is the same thing. Like being a successful business, there's so much stuff you have to do day in and day out that is just boring and tedious and annoying, but it is what it is. And those are the little things that separate the people who are successful from those that aren't. And so that's really the application. The same thing is true of jiu-jitsu. I've trained jiu-jitsu for a while and competed, and the people who are really successful are willing to do the boring stuff. They don't just go in and roll and ego smash someone. They don't pick the smaller people who they can crush. They pick the harder roles, and then they ask for feedback. They put themselves in bad positions. They intentionally they put themselves in the spots where they're not good against somebody who is very good, and then they get crushed, and then they ask for feedback, and they do it again and again and again. And ultimately that takes care of itself, and then the outcomes come, right? And it's tough at times, right? But it just comes down to wanting to improve, and then finding a way to enjoy that process. Just because it's difficult in the moment doesn't mean you can't still enjoy the process. This is one of the things I think having perspective is really helpful. If anybody's listening to this and you're pursuing dreams, you're starting businesses, you're trying to be in special operations or anything like that, like you're just like in a position of immense privilege. You're like physically capable, you're young, you have opportunities, you're out there intentionally choosing to do hard things. And there's a large percentage of people on earth who don't have that opportunity. They're just doing what they have to do to survive. And so even when it's really, really tough, man, you like, life is amazing. Like you get to choose to go do hard things, and go through that as an opportunity to grow and get better. And I think having that perspective is just I know it adds a lot of layers of resilience, and it gives you perspective, and it keeps things from being such a big deal. And it is objectively hard and difficult, and you might be miserable, but it doesn't matter, because on the whole, it's still an opportunity, and it's a great place to be.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's three things that are important, and to Jonathan's points there. If you're listening to this currently, you're a privileged person, and that's it. That's all. Irrespective of what you want in life, if you've got the luxury right now of listening to this, it means that you've got some free time. If you've got free time, you've got a luxurious position in context of a lot of the world that I've just finished traveling through Malaysia, as an example. An old lady comes immediately to mind in a place called Malacca. And in Malacca, we stopped at a roadside sugarcane stand. And the sugarcane stand, the lady who was working it, to your point, Chance, was hunchbacked. I mean, she was about 4 foot tall with a hunchback that looked like a character out of 300. And the reason that she was hunchbacked is because she'd been pressing sugarcane at her sugarcane stand for 50 years. That was her job. For 50 years, that's how she'd earned a living, was crushing sugarcane juice out of sugarcanes to make a living. 50 freaking years on the side of a road. And her son was working alongside of her. And what is his future? I'll guarantee you it's not sitting back and listening to podcasts or all of the opportunities in the world that a lot of people have that throw away because they don't understand the luxury, the opportunity, the privilege that they have in front of their nose. And so if you can just take a moment to realize that the world is now your oyster, well, then all you have to do is apply some curiosity and some passion against that contextuality, and you're off to the races. And so curious about what? So Jonathan had mentioned, BJJ, putting yourself in a position against someone who's better, the position that you're not good at, and being curious enough to try to figure it out and then ask for feedback. That is called growth mindset. But you'll stop doing that night after night after night if you don't love on the process. You've got to love what you're in order to get better at what you're doing. And so I feel that curiousness, passion, and contextuality will get you a long way down the path.
I love that. Now, I know Shaun's got to run off and catch a flight soon, so we are going to shut her down a little bit early today. I do, first off, really appreciate this conversation that you guys, John, Dutch, Shaun, fantastic conversation. Lots of really great points in here. I can't thank you guys enough. So let's get some final thoughts on anything that we've talked about so far, and then we can shut her down for the afternoon. Dutch, I'm going to come to you first. What are you thinking? Final thoughts?
A lot of the things we were talking about. Maintain focus, stay humble, be joyful. A whole lot of that is biblical in nature from a Christian standpoint, Christian worldview. It's just suffering, joy in suffering, right? To Shaun's point, a lot of us are super privileged. I'm sitting in a warm lodge for nothing. I have internet capability. I have enough money to purchase a computer and a camera and a microphone, these things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I had a great day today training men on the range, working with them, laughing, talking, chirping. By the way, shot a whole lot of chirping today, baby. It's just so lucky, so privileged. Privileged to me, blessed for the opportunity. So, but just stay humble, work hard. Don't be afraid of work. Just don't shy off, and then challenge yourself. Right? What do we talk about when we talk to new students about their shot group, for instance? If it's it's a big shot group, right? You need to slow it down a little bit. If it's tight, though, if you're good, what do? Challenge yourself, speed it up, go faster. Let's try harder. Now incorporate movement. Now incorporate a timer. Now incorporate shooting against another human being. Man-to-man competition, if you will. So. Yeah, challenge, and be joyful doing it.
Love it. John, any final thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that came to mind as we were talking is happiness and meaning. And I think people conflate the two things. A lot of times they're in pursuit of happiness, and happiness is just super fleeting. Like there are these tiny moments in life, and most of the time when we're most happy is when the most meaningful moments in our life. And meaning rarely comes when we're comfortable. Most of the most meaningful things are because they're difficult and challenging. They're shared experiences where we're pursuing something at the edge of our ability, whether that is a relationship, whether that's a moment with your kids, whether that's physically something challenging. So if you just think of pursuing things that are meaningful for you, that can oftentimes be a really good conduit for finding joy in the process itself and finding those moments of happiness and kind of reflecting back on it over time. And a lot of times people conflate kind of comfort and happiness as opposed to meaning. And if you pursue meaning, you'll ultimately end up being far happier as a human being.
Absolutely. Shaun, final thoughts?
Well, to Jonathan's point, I'm pursuing meaningful things right now in this podcast, which I find extremely difficult. There was a time when I was not very comfortable at all in front of a microphone. In fact, a team of horses couldn't have dragged me in front of a microphone. but reluctantly, through a lot of pressure of good friends, they somehow Jedi mind tricked me into doing this. And here I am doing it. Not quite as uncomfortable as I used to be, but still uncomfortable doing it. And so my curiosity on how to do it better, my passion to help my fellow man, my self-belief that I'm going to make a tiny difference in the world. You start adding these things up together, and I think the joy of life, it will start to present itself in the process, as I'm starting to see now. I enjoy these kind of conversations nowadays versus almost a year ago when we kicked this thing off, because I'm just enough comfortable in it that I'm able to really enjoy the real-time conversation with people who are not only like-minded, but add more to my body of knowledge or my sense of wisdom in this journey that we all share together. So adversity doesn't always have to look like the chin-up bar. Adversity doesn't always have to look like you've got icicles hanging off your Lululemon running gear. Adversity can come in many forms, but adversity is adversity. And as long as you tie it together with passion and meaningful pursuit, I think you'll do all right in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have much to add other than the fact that we are on day 346. The 346 live shows that Shaun and I have done this year, not including Shaun's other live that he does every day as well. So he is well into the 700s plus the other guest spots that he's been on. I think you're close to 800 now for this year, which is pretty insane. But it never would have come up. I would never have come forward unless it had been a number of people, me including, poking him saying, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?" And then him reluctantly showing up and talking about mindfulness, which is how, this all kind of started a couple of years ago. So the only thing I can say to add on to anything you guys are talking about is follow every one of these guys and learn, build, and then grow every day. You can help us. You can do that with us here on the Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.